In the last arc of this story, we were introduced to Yusaku Kitamura and Minori Kushieda, two characters from the core group. All we learnt about Kitamura is that he was good at reading people and that Taiga was in love with him. All we learnt about Minori is that she was a blast to be around and that Ryuji was in love with her. The first arc was all about establishing the bond between Ryuji and Taiga, organically developing their relationship from one of a mutually beneficial agreement to one of reliance. Now Ryuji is taking care of Taiga, and Taiga still sticks up for Ryuji where the opportunity appears. The second arc branches out to view the relationships between the main duo and their crushes, to show us what it is Ryuji likes about Minori and what Taiga likes about Kitamura. I said in the last analysis that Ryuji's self-isolation manifests as a lack of confidence. What I didn't mention is that this lack of confidence dictates his mannerisms and how he interacts with the world around him, contributing to his intimidating demeanor in a cycle that feeds itself. It's no surprise that he made no progress in changing his public reputation before Taiga intervened. Yes, there are many factors that keep Ryuji isolated, many of which are not his fault, but the lack of confidence he has certainly does him no favours in this regard. Enter Minori Kushieda, someone who is so bright and bubbly that the people around her cannot help but like her. She's the centre of attention, the life of the party, encouraging those around her and still having her own fun. Minori is the kind of person that Ryuji wants to be, someone who can exude confidence and become a pleasant presence to the lives of those around him. But as I said, Ryuji doesn't have the courage to sidestep his lack of confidence. He wishes he were more fearless, like Minori. However, we learn that Minori isn't quite as fearless as we were led to believe towards the end of episode 3. Despite being frightened, she maintains an act of confidence and keeps a level head. When asked about this, she says, and I quote, "Getting scared doesn't help, so instead, I smash my fears." On the surface, this seems like a positive sentiment. She doesn't let fears get in the way of living her life. We will later see this attitude drive her to breaking point, but for the time being, this perfectly explains why she is someone that Ryuji wants to be like. This sense of confidence in the face of adversity is what Ryuji admires most about Minori. He describes it as a glow that she has had since the day he first met her, and from this, we come to understand what drives his romantic feelings for her. Not only is there physical attraction, judging by the way he ogles her from time to time, nor is it exclusively the fact that she is probably the first woman his age to interact with him in his adult life. But more than anything, Ryuji likes Minori because he admires her. He wants to be more like her. Whether this sense of admiration is healthy or a good reason to fall in love with someone will be challenged in a later arc by a character who we technically haven't met yet. But for the meantime, we have learned what Ryuji likes about Minori. He idolizes her for the traits she possesses that he wants to adopt himself. Now, a lesser show would have copied and pasted that motivation into Taiga's character arc. She would have been lacking an aspect of herself that Kitamura had. However, we're not dealing with a lesser show here. The reason Taiga has for liking Kitamura is very different to the reason that Ryuji has for liking Minori, and that difference has widespread consequences for both characters as the story goes on. But for the time being, let's explain what Taiga's romantically driven motivations are. Within this arc, we learn that Kitamura had confessed his own romantic feelings for Taiga the previous year, and cited her aggressive attitude and violent tendencies as reasons for his attraction. Taiga explicitly says that she was overjoyed someone finally understood her, and that she only turned him down out of shock. We more or less learn that Taiga likes Kitamura because he is someone who loves her because of her negative traits. Why Kitamura would be attracted to these traits is beyond me. He does seem to have a thing for tough women, but that's not what we're here to discuss. Not yet, anyway. So there's the reason that Taiga likes Kitamura, because he accepts her for who she is. It perfectly explains why she thought that a relationship with him would have solved all her problems in the last arc. So, conversation over, right? We crack the code, it's time to pack up and go home. But no. There's something I want to unpack about this dynamic, between how Kitamura saw Taiga when he confessed, versus how he sees her now, versus how she sees herself. During the confession, Kitamura made Taiga out to be a violent sociopath. Taiga herself even says in retrospect that she wasn't sure if it was a compliment or not, but immediately follows this up with a gleeful declaration that someone finally loved her for who she was. Despite Taiga's disdain for her reputation, she somewhat agrees with it. This is why she thought that leaving Ryuji's life would be a positive thing for him in the last arc. Why she thought that her only other chance for a connection like the one she had with Ryuji would be with Kitamura. But Ryuji ultimately rejected this notion because he saw more in her than a violent sociopath. More than a clumsy, arrogant, selfish brat. He does see those things, sure, but he also sees someone who works hard. Someone who appreciates the things others do for her, even if it's in a counterintuitive way. Someone who is in pain and will do what she can to spare others that same pain. Kitamura didn't understand Taiga at all during his confession, and the fact that she still considers him to be someone who gets her tells me that she doesn't quite get herself either. When Taiga tried to confess to Kitamura a year later, he mentioned that she had become more interesting. I believe what he means is that he could finally see the more nuanced side of her that Ryuji was able to pick up on. We don't know whether or not this more clear picture of Taiga would have made Kitamura more or less interested, but we do see him appreciate her as a more fleshed out person than he had previously. Again, Taiga's crush on Kitamura only further emphasizes parts of her character that we already know. She is socially isolated and craving an intimate connection with someone who knows her well and still enjoys her company. Kitamura post-Taiga's confession would fit this mold nicely, but you know who else would? Ryuji. When I said the differences between Taiga and Ryuji's crushes would create repercussions, this is the main one I had in mind. Taiga's reasons for liking Kitamura become more and more true about Ryuji as the story goes on, so as a result, she is the first to show genuine emotional affection, the first to realize that their connection is evolving into something beyond friendship, the first to change her mind about their grand plan, and ultimately the one who has to sacrifice the most in Ryuji's pursuit of courting Minori. So there you have it. An arc that not only shows the reasons our main characters like their respective crushes, but also has those crushes contextualize the main characters further, and properly sets up their character arcs for the coming story. As for how it contributes to the investigation I am performing, the investigation as to how this show managed to make me feel the way it did on my first watch, for the time being, it's still setting up dominoes, just setting up a nice, comfortable status quo for the following arcs to push to its limit. In fact, the first challenge to this status quo comes in the form of the fifth core character, Ami Kawashima, someone who in the next arc will enter the lives of our main characters like a storm and change the dynamics between them. And that is it for this analysis. I'd like to thank my patrons, Orion Tran, Quincy Chamberlain, Lars Espen, Data52 and Jaman5. If you'd like to join these wonderful people, the fine folks on the Behind Big Joe Discord server, or see the outtakes for this video, all of this can be done from links in the description. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.